Hi, I'm Doug Black at Inside HPC, and we're conducting an SC20 retrospective discussion today, looking back at the highlights of last week's virtual supercomputing conference. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, AMD's Instinct GPU Group, which notes that they've just launched their first 10 teraflops plus GPU. Okay, so let me introduce our guest. He is Thomas Sterling, professor of electrical engineering at Indiana University, who did pioneering work in HPC cluster computing in the 1990s. And he also is president and chief scientist at the startup Simultac LLC. Thomas, welcome.
Doug, thank you very much for having me. And my thanks to AMD for supporting this, and also for our other colleagues that you had previously to discuss the aftermath of this unique supercomputing conference. And I'll tell you, I think I can say that because I was at the first one in 1988. So this is a really particularly different, strange, and it was largely successful with this virtual medium.
It was an SC like no other, that's for sure. And I hope it's the last time we do it this way completely. Tell me, just looking at thinking back on the conference overall, what was your one or two biggest takeaways?
Well, I was very impressed by just how much of the agenda they were able to support in spite of all of the technical difficulties and, of course, the lack of the serendipity that we've all come to expect. And I was impressed by support for workshops, for Birds of the Feather session. The keynote address was really excellent, meeting all of our standards, as were other invited talks. The vendor support, certainly less than wandering around the exhibit floor, but many of the messages came out. So I would say, as a first attempt at going 21st century for this conference, that it was really good. And so you said two things. So that was the first one. The second one was how bad it was. All the aspects of a real live conference we weren't able to entertain. All of the serendipitous discussions, work, and plans that ordinarily happen pretty much did not happen in this one. And there were lots of technical flaws that had to be debugged on the fly. So those are my two observations, the good and the bad.
It's tough. I mean, and we're doing a lot of videos ourselves, and glitches come up all the time. There's always problems lying in wait. So thinking back on the sessions that you went to, were there any that stood out to you as being particularly valuable or outstanding?
Well, a couple. I know that one of your previous speakers was sort of glad there wasn't a lot about the top 500 list, and I'm perfectly sensitive to the reasons for that. Dense matrix math is certainly not representative of the wide array, ever-growing array of applications and idioms we need. However, I am a strong supporter of the data set, the continuous data set. And so the BOF, and I believe that was on Monday, that Eric Strohmeyer presented primarily of the top 500 list was appreciated. And there were many issues. Congratulations to Fugaku, the #1 machine from Japan, put together by Fujitsu and Riken. And I believe the performance was something in excess of 440 petaflops RMAC, close to, better than 2.5 times away from exascale. The trends were significant in that they showed a decline in the rate of growth of the performance and the different classes of machine and where those machines were being produced and deployed. And so I found this to be a very valuable session. If I may pick one other that I think was good, was a panel session that was organized by Bill Kramer at NCSA currently, and it was a sequel to a panel at SC 2006 titled Exotic Computation and Systems Technology. In 2006, we were asked to predict when what would be the state of computing and the means of achieving computing in 2020. This year, in spite of the virtual medium, we had the second panel, and I was pleased to participate again 15 years later. And in this, we were to look at our predictions from 2006 and judge them. That was humbling. And then to predict for 2035. And that was a lot of fun. The audience, and they were able to achieve this, the audience voted for who won for the 2006 prediction and who is likely to, who won for the 2035 or the 2020 prediction for 2035. I won for the 2006 prediction to 2020, which surprised me because I had been asked to speculate on the consequences of a project that I ran for several federal agencies around 2000. It's called the HTMT project, and there were definitely things that we didn't do that we predicted. Sorry for that. Kathy Yellick won for her very articulate, eloquent presentation for the implication of conventional practices for 2035, and she got the other bottle of wine for that. That was a lot of fun, and to our surprise, Bill reported we had almost 400 attendees, and they actively engaged with questions which we answered, and it was actually quite interesting. So those were certainly two of the things that I thought were really worthwhile and that helped make SC 2020, as good as SC 2019, and almost as good as where I hope we'll be in 2021.
Okay, great. With your first answer, you kind of gave your overall impressions of virtual SC20. Do you have any possible suggestions for how to improve things?
Well, we know, both you and I know, many of the organizers that took on this very difficult task. And in terms of the quality of effort and the intent, there's no advances that could be made. This was really quite remarkable, and I cannot thank enough all of the people who did this. But yes, one obvious thing is we really needed to get the technologies better. A second thing was, and this is hard, increasing the way to have interactivity, regain some of that interactivity would be very good. So, for example, the exhibits, of which there were quite a few, nonetheless, it wasn't interactive. There wasn't somebody online accessible to the virtual booth to exchange and interact. And maybe that would have been too much bandwidth. Indiana University had a research or college booth, and I did pre-record at their request a 10-minute presentation, but I wasn't allowed to be on the other end to answer any questions. So I think, if anything, we must try to increase the interactivity if we are to use virtual technology as well. The thing I miss, and I have no idea how to improve this, is when I'm speaking, and I had a few opportunities to do so. When I'm speaking, I like to see the audience. I like to see when they're happy and when they're not happy with me. That feedback closes the loop and tells me whether to speed up or slow down, or struggle to say something entertaining. And just talking into a green dot is not the same experience. I don't know how to fix that. And so I would say interactivity and improving the technologies. However, I would say one example of trying to make that work was a set of our colleagues who, and I would have never expected them to do it, actually held a party. This is like the 22nd or 23rd Beowulf Bash, and I was invited, of course. And there were well over 100 people who attended. Now, usually the number is somewhere between 400 and 500. It's unique in that while it is sponsored by a number of the industry communities, nonetheless, no one is trying to sell anything. And it is a party at which younger people feel very comfortable. And so it brings in a unique crowd. So you have young people talking to, very established people who are also more relaxed than usual. No one's putting on a show. And they did this. Now, there was no free beer, so that was kind of a downer. And there wasn't the total randomness of interactions that ordinarily are, but they set it up with multiple rooms. Each room had a moderator, and somehow, some miracle of technology, they bounced people around from room to room. So you got a refresh of the mix. And there were maybe half a dozen such rooms. And people came in and people stayed until the end. So that certainly gave an example of what could go forward, what could be improved. I learned a great deal just seeing the process.
Well, we're making strides on the technology. An event like that really shows progress, but there's always going to be, a lot more progress to be made as well. And but you've kind of answered this question already to an extent. But in terms of news announcements that came out last week, vendor activities, or Zoom parties such as the Beowulf Bash, what stood out for you, Thomas?
Well, this is sort of a cliche, but NVIDIA made multiple announcements about their new offerings. And that showed a continued evolution and assertion of innovation within the bounds of market and technology. And of course, they're going through a corner turning in terms of their own business model and their recent acquisitions in other companies. I don't quite know where that's going to go, but NVIDIA has certainly emerged as a first-tier player, and this only reinforced that impression.
Yeah, absolutely. A very impressive showing by them. All right, Thomas. Well, thanks so much for your insights about last week's conference. Thank you for your time.
And Doug, thank you very much for organizing this, and I really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation. You take care.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.